Welcome to Human Risk, a podcast dedicated to the understanding of human behavior as a risk. Here's your host, Christian Hunt.
Hello and welcome back to the Human Risk podcast. In this series, I speak to people who can help us to understand human decision-making and the risks it poses. Now, this is an episode I'm really excited about because my guest this time has some fascinating insights into human risk thanks to his amazing career. And he's also incredibly good company. If you're of a certain age, then the name Glenn Medeiros may well bring back some memories. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, he was a chart-topping artist with hits that included Nothing's Gonna Change My Love for You and a duet with Bobby Brown called She Ain't Worth It. Now, because of licensing laws, I can't play you any of his songs, but there are links to those in the show notes if you need reminding or want to sample them before listening to the episode. Glenn was propelled to stardom by a Hawaiian talent contest and given a recording contract and became almost an overnight success. Nowadays, Glenn Medeiros is Dr. Glenn Medeiros, and he's the president and CEO of St. Louis School in Honolulu, Hawaii. I reached out to Glenn because as I was indulging in one of those whatever happened to discussions with my friend Al, who also listens to the show, so hello to him, and Glenn's name came up. How had a teenage pop idol become an educator? I figured he must have some fascinating stories to tell, so I was thrilled when he agreed to come onto the show, because what he has to say is really interesting. Now, unsurprisingly, the music industry is full of human risk, and Glenn's frank and very modest account of what happened to him is littered with insights into an industry we all know, but probably don't really understand. This is one of those episodes where my curiosity has produced what, for me at least, is an incredibly engaging discussion with so many human risk lessons for us. Glenn is incredibly insightful and a lot of fun as well. So for some really unique insights into music, education, and a ton of other things, please enjoy my discussion with Dr. Glenn Medeiros. Dr. Glenn Medeiros, welcome to the Human Risk podcast.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's my absolute pleasure. And look, back in 1987, which feels like a long time ago because it was, I first got to know you because you were a pop star and you were the top of the charts here in the UK for, I think, 4 or 5 weeks. So I want to kind of start off with that and then move into what has been, from my perspective, fascinating career change. So can you think back to those days and how was that? Because you were sort of propelled into stardom very quickly.
Yes, it was quite a journey actually. Coming from a small island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean in Hawaii, we're talking about 50,000 people altogether living in a small little town, to traveling to 40 countries around the world and singing. It was such a great experience for a young man from Hawaii, and I just feel so blessed to have had the opportunity to travel and meet incredible people and see amazing places.
I mean, was it literally overnight for you? Because there's the sort of the fairy tale story that I recall and sort of having reread it seems to be it happened relatively quickly.
No, it did. I when I was a third grader, I had a wonderful music teacher, and I said to myself, I'm going to be an educator someday. I love singing, but I was already planning out my career as an educator, and maybe I thought I could perform at night. We have these performances called luau's here in Hawaii. They're like parties where people come together and we dance and sing. And so I thought I could make a little extra money singing at night and being an educator during the day. But when I entered a singing contest, talent contest, I should say, at the age of 16, the winner of the contest was entitled to go into a recording studio at no cost to record a song. And the song I had sung at the contest was Nothing's Gonna Change My Love for You. And although I was thinking of doing an original tune, I was convinced, persuaded by the director of the radio station that sponsored the event to re-record George Benson's version of Nothing's Gonna Change My Love for You, which ended up being a great decision because it led to my career in the music industry.
Wow, and so was that a song that you liked or familiar with, or was it just totally someone else's suggestion?
No. George Benson is one of my favorite artists. I grew up listening to a lot of his stuff, so it's a song. It was one of my favorite songs, actually. But the program director at the radio station that sponsored the event had said that Whitney Houston had recorded "The Greatest Love of All," which was originally recorded by George Benson, and had turned it into an even larger hit. This person felt that I could do the same with this particular song. George Benson's version, I tell everyone to this day, is 10 times better than mine. But it just so happens that sometimes I think people get, George Benson was not only an incredible singer, but also an incredible guitar player. So a lot of people saw him as a jazz artist, maybe, and not so much pop, even though he did have some great success in that area too. So, no, I'm a huge George Benson fan, even today. So. But again, Nothing's Going to Change My Love for You and The Greatest Love of All was actually written by Michael Masser, same writer. And so I think that person who had helped me make that decision really kind of knew what he was talking about.
Wow. Well, yeah, I mean, it clearly resonated, and it's one of those songs that kind of is it certainly seemed massively iconic at the time, and it was just sort of everywhere from what I recall. And it was one of those sort of things that seemed to capture the mood. And, it just kind of rode. And I'm sure there were, we were talking before because I had a vinyl copy, which unfortunately, given this is audio, people can't see. But you and I have seen this vinyl copy. And the copy that was given by a friend of mine, it was actually given by someone called Claire to, I presume, her boyfriend, but who knows, John at the time. And so this song kind of spawned loads of relationships. It's just a majorly iconic piece. Did it surprise you that it picked off so it picked up that way, or did you kind of realize that you were onto a good thing as it sort of started to?
Well, I mean, when you're young and you don't really know that much about life in general, you think in simple terms. So for me, I felt the song was good. The recording, we spent about $500 on the recording, as opposed to, George Benson probably spent about $100,000 on the recording. And I know a lot of the artists he used on that record because I ended up working with them later. And they're really incredibly talented musicians who are not cheap. They cost a lot to utilize them. So I'd always, like I mentioned earlier, preferred George Benson's version much better. I always felt that mine was kind of like a cheap kind of version of it. But you're right. I mean, it just took off, and I don't know exactly why. I think part of it was I was young, and I think the song spoke to a lot of young people. I think the other thing that I think played a role in it was that when the song ended up getting a little bit of traction in Hawaii, immediately I was signed to a small recording label, and they said, let's do a music video. And I said, okay, let's just go and have it done at my favorite beaches on Kauai. I didn't think anything of it. And so we chose my favorite beaches. They found a girl that they thought, other people around the world could relate to. Right. And I think the music video played a role in that also. And, people love Hawaii. They love anything having to do with Hawaii. So I think the combination of me being young, a combination of me being from Hawaii, the video, but also just the song itself. It's a beautiful lyric. I mean, there's nothing greater that you could tell someone that your love for them is unconditional. So, kudos to Michael Masser and Jerry Goffin for writing that song.
Is this early MTV era?
Yeah, it was pretty early on. And so I think the video did play a role in it. So yes, no doubt. And it was, again, it came totally naturally, that I lived in Hawaii. The video was shot in Hawaii. And so I think it worked out well in that respect.
And it's interesting when you say that, because if you look at artists nowadays, there's a lot of fabrication and there's a sort of artifice around it. And what you've just described there is, beautiful sort of innocence, as you say, that's reflected in the lyrics of the song. But it's kind of like, well, we'll just do something here. I'll just be me, and we'll just see what happens. And there's an authenticity to that, which is kind of interesting. And I fear is sometimes lacking in modern artists who are produced and, kind of told what to do.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I am currently working on the last 2 chapters of a book about my journey, not so much as a musician because that plays a role in it, but also just my journey from a boy to a man, and a lot of it includes my experiences as an artist, as a singer. And one thing I can say is that sometimes when you're exposed to the world, it can change you in a lot of positive ways. And I think for me, for the most part, it did. As a person, I grew much more. But as an artist, it actually worked in the opposite direction because I started listening too much to people around me, and I moved away from being authentically myself to a point where I was allowing people to say, Glenn, you need to do this and you need to do that, and this is what it takes. And I started listening to a lot of the media who, in many cases, would say to me, hey, Glenn, you're just another Barry Manilow. You're just another this. Don't you want to be different? Don't you have an edge to you? You just seem like just this regular guy, which I was.
Right.
So I think over time I started trying to, not so much me, but I think others around me wanted to see a change, and so I ended up branching out into hip hop and different things. And in retrospect, I think that ended up hurting my career. But at the same time, I'm happy for that, even that happening, because it did lead me to do what I originally wanted to do, which was to be an educator.
And it's really interesting, the kind of, you're just another Barry Manilow, which is kind of sounds like an insult, but that guy's phenomenal, right? So...
No. I mean, at the time, I think, and I loved Barry Manilow, and I love listening to his music, but I think if you were, I don't know what way to put this, for people to believe that I was authentic, I would have had to play the Hawaii card very hard,
right?
Or I would have had to play the Portuguese card, right? My background being Portuguese and having some type of Latino music happening, but in the early 90s, it was all about being authentic. And to a lot of people, Barry Manilow was not authentic. He was just this guy who sang cheesy pop love songs and that was trying to sell records, which to me is completely ludicrous. But it was what a lot of people felt at the time. I think since that time, people see him as this incredible writer, and that even though his music might be kind of corny, they still respect him. But in the early 90s, it was almost taboo to be a guy, a male singer that didn't have tats, that wasn't lifting weights, that wasn't really edgy. And if you look at the artists who were most popular at the time, you could, you had a few outliers out there, but for the most part, I didn't really fall into the category of artists that there were. Record companies were looking at, or people in the press.
And that's amazing. So you kind of come into this thing as you, and then the machine, if you like, takes over.
Yes.
And I'm fascinated by that kind of shift into hip hop. So I presume we're talking at the time of the sort of Bobby Brown collaboration, which, by the way, I think is a great track. I love it.
Thank you.
So they sort of decide the path for you. How does it work? Is it they sort of decide the path for you, or they kind of nod you in a direction?
Yeah. See, I guess I'm one of the few people that can actually truly be honest about this, because I don't generate much funds from singing anymore. Most of the money that I make is as an administrator of a school, and ironically, I make a ton more money now than I did as a singer, which is crazy.
Which is counterintuitive, right?
I was talking to my attorney about it, and how can I be making this kind of money after selling millions of records and traveling around the world? Yes, I attained my doctorate degree. Yes, it's difficult to become a president of an institution like the one that I am of now, but you would think that I could have pulled in a lot of money. But the way things are structured in the recording industry, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, it's just that for most artists, unless you're writing your own music, you're really not going to make a whole lot of money. The record companies, they put thousands of dollars into records, and they'd only get maybe 1% of those records would end up being successful. So the structure in place is one that where they recoup all of their, before an artist can make any money, they have to recoup all these costs for creating the record, for providing the artist money to live on while the record's being made, to pay for marketing tours, for traveling, for meals. So a lot of people don't realize that. I mean, I remember being on tour thinking, wow, like, I don't know if I have enough money in my bank to make it next month. You know, and I was selling records left and right. So I mean, I had enough to get by, but I literally had to be thinking about, where am I going to make my next, you know, where's going to be my next performance? I literally had to think about it a lot. It wasn't like, hey, you know, if I do this gig, I'll get an extra $20,000. I mean, it wasn't that. So, but I do think being a part of the music industry as a young person is very tough, because young people are impressionable, and young people haven't really figured out who they are yet. So when you do get questioned by people in the press when you're young, you don't know what to believe. If I'm 24 years old and I get questioned by somebody in the press, I'll say, okay, that's your opinion, but this is what I believe. But when you're 16 years old, you're thinking, are they really right? Like, is that true? Wow. I mean, and you start looking around and you don't know who to believe. And that's why you see a lot of young artists, you know, they start off wholesome, and next thing you know, they're doing A, B, and C on music videos and outside, because they're being fed this information to believe that for you to be successful in life, you need to do A, B, and C. When I think exactly what you were saying, it's all about being authentic. You have to be authentic. You really do. And if people don't like that, then they don't like it, and it's okay. Now, it's difficult to be authentic when you're young, because what I tell people is that when you're young, you're still at a point in your in you becoming an adult where you're still imitating. So as young people, we imitate. And then what ends up happening let's say I use the example of being a singer. I imitate a little bit of Barry Manilow, a little bit of George Michael, a little bit of Michael Jackson, a little bit of that, my favorite singers, and my voice ends up becoming a combination of what they do and then what I was given as far as my mechanics. And so when I think for a lot of artists, that doesn't really come together until their mid-20s. And so you listen to a lot of other artists. I mean, you listen to even somebody like Bob Marley. Bob Marley wasn't singing like the Bob Marley we know when he first started his career. We have recordings of him singing all kinds of different stuff. But it took him some time to be able to figure out his authentic self and what made him unique by combining all of those sounds together. And so a lot of artists, they start by imitating, and then they become labeled because of the imitating that they do, and they haven't really truly found themselves. And while they're in the industry trying to find themselves, they have a lot of people telling them what to do, as opposed to just being alone and finding themselves. And it really creates a negative situation. So what I found in the music industry is that the artists that have done really well, if you think about it, most solo artists that have done well started with a group, and then they disconnected once they found their sound and themselves. And I think that makes a lot of sense, because then they do not become labeled as, oh, this is your thing. Oh, that was your group. You know, George Michael, that was Wham, right? That was Wham.
Right.
You know, George Michael is George Michael once he began as George Michael. Not to say that Wham is incredible.
Yeah, totally.
But at the same time, I think people, you know, gave him the pass when he ended up coming out with records that were more kind of adult-centered, more, they were okay with it, because he didn't get questioned, oh, why aren't you doing the Wham stuff as opposed to doing this? Well, he's an adult now. He's found himself, and he's grown into himself.
That's fascinating. And as you say, there's plenty of examples where that happens. Mm-hmm. And I'm really intrigued by that sort of musical puberty thing, because clearly it sounds like it's sort of not just your voice, but also your inspiration, what direction you want to go. And so that, you know, that's a sort of fascinating piece, which clearly you can only find out by testing the waters a bit.
Well, you know, I've been around different artists. I mean, I've been lucky enough to work with some massive artists, and I've been with them in the recording studio, and they already come in with their preconceived notions of who I am. I'm singing. I'm not playing an instrument. I'm just singing in front of everyone, and I'm a young teen singing a love song. So they're thinking, well, the guy's voice is pretty decent, but probably not really a talented guy. And then when I spend time with them, they're like, hey, Glenn, do you play the piano? I said, oh, a little bit. Have you ever taken lessons? No, not really. And I'll start fiddling around and I hear a song. And I've always been the type that I could pick up an instrument and kind of just play it by ear. So if I'll play it on the piano and people are like, wow, Glenn, you're pretty talented. You could just hear the song and play it for the first time. Why aren't you playing the piano on stage? And I said, well, I don't really feel confident about it because I never really took lessons and I kind of did it on my own. So I think for people, a lot of people that start off young, when I was from the age of 15 through 18, when I was on tour, I could have been taking piano lessons to a point where I was so confident that I could just go up there on stage and do whatever I want. But I never had the chance to really develop that in a structured way per se. And although I do play the guitar and piano, I never felt confident enough because I had already been on stage and I'd already been successful without using that. And I didn't feel the need to go up and utilize it. So in retrospect, I think if I had been on my own for a while and started my career later, I probably would have gravitated towards the piano and guitar, and it'd be a bigger part of who I was as an artist. But again, as you said, the teenage artist is undeveloped yet. They're very raw. I mean, think about this. Like, think about your greatest poets. What were they writing at the age of 16? And did they find their voice at 16? And imagine getting their writings out into the public at the age of 16, and would they have been seen the same way? It's very it's tough. My daughter is in freshman year or sophomore year in college, and she sings also, and she's got a really nice voice, and she's pretty, and she's got everything that I think you would need to become successful. But I have told her myself. I said, you need to wait. I said, wait until you get your degree, so that you have something to fall back on, and wait until you fully mature, until you fully find yourself, your true, authentic self. So she's at Notre Dame University now. She's studying. She wants to be an attorney. But I've told her that, wait until you truly find your sound in yourself before you put yourself out there. And, what you asked me a little bit earlier, how does someone go from seeing Nothing's Gonna Change My Love to doing hip hop? And I can be honest with you, I had a record executive look me straight in the eye and say, Glenn, I had just bought my first home. I had enough money, not a lot, but I put down about $50,000 to purchase, put a down payment on my first home, and that was I had made it because of one particular gig that I did. I said, I'm just taking this money, putting it to the house. It was one of the best decisions I ever made. But I still had to make monthly payments on it, right? I didn't pay the
right. Yeah.
So I just had bought the house. I was really excited. I think I was about 20 at the time, and I walked into MCA Records, and the record executive looked at me and he says, "Hey, Glenn, so what do you want to do for your next record?" And I said, "Well, I'm kind of looking at like a Richard Marx kind of thing, like like a guitar, kind of more along the lines of what I'm doing, but maybe a little bit more rock, and a little bit more pop rock, soft pop rock." And he says, Glenn, if you do that, then we're going to release you from the label. And I remember feeling like, wow, like if they release me, I won't get a deal anywhere. And I won't be able to make a living. And so I started to make decisions. I basically told them, hey, what do you want me to do then? And they said, oh, well, we got Bobby Brown on the recording label. He's on a break. I think you should do some hip hop. I got these writers that can work with you. Why don't you go ahead and do some stuff, and we'll have Bobby rap on one of the songs. And I said, okay, and, at least I can make a living, and who knows, maybe something will happen. I don't know.
Yeah, this might be a really good idea, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking to myself, it's better than my career ending. And literally, it would have ended. because at that particular time in the at 1990, which was the time I was 20, the music scene was moving from, if you're not doing hip hop or grunge, you're really kind of like a lot of the pop artists like myself were kind of seen as they're 80s artists. We're moving to the 90s now.
So you're basically Barry Manilow in the press depiction of it, right? Which is not
a wannabe Barry Manilow. Yeah.
But so is it? I'm intrigued by the nature of the contract, and I kind of want to come on and explore whether this is exploitative or not, because I mean it's true. But I'm fascinated by it. Is it contractually they can tell you what to do, or is that just the practical outcome? In that you kind of know that legally you've still got a contract, but they won't let you record.
Yeah, so the contract is there basically to protect them, not the artist. And hey, I'm not the anti-corporate guy, not at all. I mean, I totally understand where they're coming from. They need to protect themselves. Most artists don't end up making very much money. I totally get it, but really the power is in the hands of the record company, and I think the timing in the 90s was such that it was a combination of music changing, the 80s kind of it started becoming more edgy, and I think that was directly related to the fact that technology started changing. So with the internet starting to come, people had more choices now, and then you saw a combination of I started to see when I first started singing, a lot of the radio station I used to go and promote my songs, and I'd go to these like lower level radio stations with only just a few listeners. I try to get the song on, they get it on, then I go to like a level 3 radio station. Then I do a promo there. Then I go and I do well there. And then I go to level 2. And then next thing you know, I'm in a big city like New York City on the number 1 station with them playing the song, and it's a hit. So you kind of work your way up. And each station was owned by a different company. In the 1990s, you started to see a lot of these radio stations started merging. And now all of a sudden, the only way you could get your records played is if you are on a major record label. It wasn't in the past. You could be on a small label and eventually get your record played, but that started to change. And then you have technology and people starting to have choices. And so now I started hearing things like, well, it's not about having one hit that everybody likes. It's about you being a country singer and you getting the country singing market and you finding your market. So the market started splicing into different categories, just like the radio stations were being bought up by one major corporation, and then instead of competing with each other, they would take that one major company would say, okay, we'll have a country station, we'll have an R&B station, we'll have this. And so it wasn't so much about the song, and because radio stations used to fight, like, we're the first one to play this song. That's
right.
That was their thing. But it totally changed at that point. It wasn't about that. It was more I started realizing that it was more about we're going to get down. It's not about getting Glenn Medeiros, this artist that's starting to work his way up. Because we have a certain relationship with, let's say, MCA Records, it's about getting Bobby Brown there because we have the ends with the MCA Records and we can get him to come. So it was a whole different thing. And so I can understand why MCA wanted to utilize Bobby in that way. He was in between records and having him rap on the song and be a part of it. But again, so I was going through, and then another factor in 1990 for me that made a big difference was the president of the record label, the person that was in part responsible for signing me onto record label, left for another label. Although he and I we weren't very close, the people under him left with him too, and I was left kind of, with the one label with the other people that were in charge of it that didn't really sign me on, except for the one person that I'm referring to early in the conversation about having to do a different type of record. So a lot of different things were happening in the early 1990s, and I got caught up in this hailstorm of changes. And now I can sit back and I can see what happened, but it was I couldn't quite understand it, because in 1990 I was the only artist in the United States on MCA Records with the #1 song in the country, the only one.
Right, which by any other industry, you'd be going, we are sitting on hot property here, therefore we will protect this.
Exactly, and it didn't mean anything. It didn't mean anything. One, because I wasn't authentic. People saw it as a departure from what I was doing previously. They saw it as more of a Bobby Brown song, because that was his style of music. And who's to blame? I blame myself, because honestly, I am the one that should have said, you know what? I'm sorry, but this is what it's going to be. I mean, there's so many stories of artists that have done that. Like Prince, for instance, who I had a chance to work with in his recording studio in Minneapolis.
Way to go. I mean, that's amazing, right?
I mean, yeah, and he's like a really nice guy, and and I'm working with his studio, and and he's telling me, Glenn, I said, no, I said, I'm playing all of the instruments. I'm doing my own songs. If you don't like it, too bad. And I remember telling him, I said, yeah, that's where I messed up. I said, I didn't do that. And he said, well, you live and learn. You just got to move forward, and that's the way it is. So you live and learn. But he definitely made the right decision for himself. I mean, come on now. I mean, I'm nowhere close to the vicinity of Prince's talent, but at the same time, I think a lot of artists out there will make the decision to not be authentic because they simply have to survive. And I don't think that's a horrible thing. But that's why I always tell up-and-coming artists, get your degree, get something to fall back on, because you don't want to be placed in a situation where you have to make a choice about something. And because the music industry can be very, very tough on people. There's a lot of one of the things that I didn't like about the music industry was that there's a lot of mafia involved in the music industry, and I saw a lot of people around me be negatively impacted, and a lot of drug sales, just illegal things happening where people, they see all these nice cars and everything on these videos and all that, and people think it's theirs, but it's not. And a lot of times artists get set up by people. A manager will come up to them and say, look, I'll take care of everything. Don't worry. They'll put them on a monthly stipend. They'll get them a car. So don't worry, sell everything you own. And next thing you know, they're pretty much prostitutes to a pimp, really. And I've seen so much of that. It's so common. And on the other hand, you see situations where I saw so many women and men sometimes too being taken advantage of sexually too, because that's what they felt that's what they needed to do to survive. Now, in my case, there were several instances where, I'm talking to a record producer, and next thing you know, he walks out in his like he walked out of the shower with his robe on, and then all of a sudden I say, "Oh my God! I just remembered I had an appointment in about 5 minutes," and I was out of there.
This is sort of Harvey Weinstein type stuff, but in the music industry.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's so common that people would joke about it. It was horrible, but it was very common. And even the people that were involved in it, the ones that I knew, said, "Hey, I'm doing it. I'm doing this, and yeah, it's messed up, but hey, I'm making a lot of money, and I'm okay with it." I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Right. And what's going through my mind as you said it. I mean, literally, I've got the words of your song, right, which is, our dreams are young. And there's something kind of interesting, which is this sort of naivety, if you like, that you come into this thing because I guess no one's going to take you aside and go, hey, you're about to enter this hideous thing and this is how to play it. You have to find that out for yourself, I'm guessing.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, there's little things that you find along the way. Like, for instance, one of the things I write about in my book is I remember being out with this major producer, and we go out to dinner. We talk about different things, and I'll never forget. He's on the phone saying, good night to his kids. Love you, love you, baby. Talking to each kid, get a good sleep. Talking to his wife, and then I remember about 20 minutes later, hey, baby, you gonna meet me afterwards? Okay, all right. That was the norm.
Right.
That was the norm for people to have relationships and multiple relationships, and for lying was just the norm. And you, every once in a while, you find someone that is different from that, and you think, wow, this is beautiful. But for the most part, and I think it's a lot easier. It was a lot easier in the 1990s to do those type of things. But with technology and cell phones and social media now, I would think it's much more difficult. But definitely it ran rampant throughout the music industry. The music industry is a very tough industry, which is why I told my daughter, you need to get your degree. You need to get if it's law, then get your law degree. Get that together. You'll probably be about 24. At that point, you'll find your voice. You find your sound. And you know what? Do whatever it takes. You want to move to New York, Nashville, whatever, go for it. But after about 3, 4, 5 years, you can sit back and say, you know what? I don't like this, and nobody's going to force me to do anything I don't want to do. And I'm going to go and practice law.
And of course, you'll be able to sue people if they cause you problems on the way.
Right.
So you're like superbly equipped with a kind of backup option, and you've got a serious threat as you go. So I love that. That's like playing both sides of the thing.
That's right.
But I mean, this is so. If you, I mean, you're clearly passing on that advice to your daughter. But if you look back, I mean, if you were able to time travel, do you think the young Glenn Medeiros would listen to any of this stuff, or are you just swept up in the moment, and therefore even if someone were to have been able to give you advice, is that something one's able to take on in the kind of heat of the moment?
That's a great question, because you don't know who to listen to, and when you become marketable. You start to get advice from everyone, because everyone kind of wants a piece of the action. And so you have to, I always tell people, you got to kind of follow the money trail. But even then, I do believe there's some give and take also. So I think one of the reasons why I did achieve some of the success that I did is because I was open to trying different things. So would I have listened to myself now? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I think I would have listened to a certain extent. But when I look back, there were a lot of pieces of advice that were like gold that I didn't listen to. I remember early on in my career, someone said, Glenn, I need you to, no matter what you do, take 30% of what you make and put into an account that you do not touch. If I had done that, that would have changed my life significantly. I didn't make a whole ton of money, but I would have made enough to have a real nice nest egg, so that when people would have said, hey, Glenn, I want you to do this hip hop record, I would have said, I don't think so. So that
yeah, it would have been like, literally, it's not worth it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's fully intended, right? That's what, and so kind of you get to the stage where you've had this great success, and then we have the Bobby Brown thing, and then it sort of seems to fizzle for you a little bit because of the dynamics you've talked about. So is it are you exiting from the industry, or is the industry exiting you? Is it mutually agreed? How does that sort of happen?
Yeah, fizzle is really a nice way to put it. Actually, it was a pure just drop from the sky. I mean, it was I would say that it was a combination of both. After the She Ain't Worth a Record and that whole record there, I traveled to Europe, and it was kind of a mixture of, wow, this is a cool record. Oh, but this is so different from what you've done in the past. Came back home, tried looking for some other deals, couldn't do it. But eventually, I was. What ended up happening was something really remarkable. Believe it or not, I think sometimes when you hit your bottom, the best things come from it when you just hit rock bottom. For me, I was at the time I was 22 years old. I couldn't get a record deal anywhere. I was running low on funds, but I had this house on Kauai that I had bought in part. And I had never spent time with my family, my father, my mother, very much time. And I needed some time just to myself. And so for 2 years, what I did was, which was really great, I convinced the small record label that I was with, because we were trying to get major recording deals, which we couldn't, but I still continued with my small record label in the United States. I convinced them to say, hey, look, guess what? You know I play the guitar. You know I play the piano. I can do this. Even though I was kind of pushing a little bit, I said, look, get me all of this equipment that I want. I'm going to build a studio in my home, and I'm just going to write songs for 2 years, and I'm going to just do a whole bunch of publishing deals. And that's what I did. I actually ended up writing about 200 songs in the 2 years. I played tennis every day. I golfed. I enjoyed life. I wrote commercials for television stations. I did all kinds of things. And just enough to kind of live and get by. And it was really 2 of the happiest years of my life. I really enjoyed myself. But during those 2 years, I ended in writing the songs that I did. I ended up finding out more about myself than I ever did. The power of writing is incredible, because it's one thing to be able to think that you know who you are and what you believe in, but it's another thing when you actually take the time to sit down and reflect and then create. And it was beautiful. And so after 2 years of doing that, I had come to the conclusion that it's time for me to either go out to LA and take this new sound. I think I had found my authentic self with that sound that I had kind of created, which is kind of combination of all the things that I enjoy listening to. And I said to myself, I either move to LA with this, or I just need to start writing for other people. And just as I was making that decision, I got a phone call from an old friend of mine who's a comedian, and he lives on Oahu, where I live now. And he said, Glenn, I got a show here for you. There's a manager that wants you here to perform 5 nights a week, and which was for really good money. I think I was making at the time, there was good money. Not I wasn't a millionaire, but I think I was making like a couple $1,000s a night or something, singing. And I said, well, and it was a lot more than I was making at the time. And I just said, you know what, this is a perfect opportunity for me to perform at night and then attain my bachelor's degree during the day. And I'll write music for other people. So I started writing for all kinds of other people out there. And I ended up taking that route. So it was a combination of things. If I had gone to, I was 24. If I had gone to LA, I would have been already seen as kind of on the older side. But at the same time, I don't know. I don't know what would have happened. I think if I had moved to France, where I had the most success as a singer, maybe I could have done something there. There's a part of me that believes that. But whatever the case is, I ended up choosing this route, and I'm very glad that I did, though.
And that's an incredibly sort of interesting piece, because you're able to kind of continue the thing you're passionate about, and you're kind of building that kind of backup plan. That's an incredibly sort of combination of incredibly sensible, right, which is academic career. You're following that, you're getting the qualification. On the other hand, you're also having some fun at the same time. And I think that's like a beautiful combination, because often you get a thing where people have to sacrifice one or the other. And you've beautifully made your existence around those two poles.
Well, as in the book that I'm writing, my journey from a boy to a man, I think I was in a constant search, like everyone else is, a search for happiness. And what I ended up finding is that life is really about balance. And if you're in a state of balance, that's where you want to be. In the music industry, it's very difficult to be in a state of balance. It's either a feast or famine. It just doesn't work that way. And so it was, what you're saying is correct. The opportunity that was provided to me allowed me for me to be in a state of balance where I could perform, which I love doing, while at the same time build myself a new career, and a career that, most other careers, if you're successful, like for me, I've been the president of Hawaii's oldest Catholic school. We're celebrating 175 years next year.
Wow, amazing.
It's where I run a $14 million budget a year of about 120 employees. And we've got about 900 students at the school. and from K to 12. And when I started at this school, I was very lucky, and I won't take all of the credit for it, because I should really only take a part of the credit, because it's been a real team effort. But when I started, we were at about 500 students. The school is about to close. We're at about 900 students now. We were in about $10 million in debt. We got that down to about $1 million. We've really turned the school around. So I make the analogy, so here's this kid out of Hawaii, 16 years old. What is the chances of somebody selling 7 million records? And then you would think that would sustain somebody for the rest of their career. But in reality, it meant nothing in 1992. For me, as I make pretty good money as the president of the school, but with the success that I've had, even if things went bad here, and I hope it never does, even if it went back down to 500 and the debt went back up to 10 million, I could easily get a job for twice as much that I get right now. Because in the business industry, if you can turn around a company, you're gold. You're gold to them. And so it's just so the same rules that apply in the business world, in the general business world, do not apply to the music industry. It doesn't. And that's scary. That's why I tell people, you want to follow your dreams, go ahead, but you need to have something to fall back on. You cannot be in a situation where you're only relying on the music industry. It's too wild. It's too crazy. And when you see people, I know this is one of my little pet peeves. I'm a pretty positive person, but when I see these videos out there with a lot of successful people saying, you just have to follow your dreams. That's what it is. Follow your dreams. I keep telling myself, no, stop telling them that, because in reality, what you want to do is you want to be a realist and you want to follow your dreams, but don't just follow one dream. Like, have 3 dreams, have 4 dreams, and work on each one, because one of them may or may not happen, but you can't put everything into one thing. It's you look at some of the most successful business people out there. They'll buy a little bit of this company, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, and one of them will do well. And so it's life in many ways is a numbers game, and I know that it's not the most attractive pitch out there, but I mean it is what it is. Yeah.
But I love this whole thing, because this is the sort of the classic kind of cognitive bias where, we look at anybody successful, what did they do? They single-mindedly followed their dreams. And so we see famous, there's business people, there's athletes, there's kind of music, all these people. It's the same narrative. But of course, what you don't see is the ton of other people that tried that and failed, because they don't get to write biographies. And the other thing is, if you've picked a bad strategy, right, pursuing that doggedly is really stupid.
It is. I completely agree. And the people that are out there that are saying follow your dreams, I completely get it, because it worked for them and they want to see the same thing happen with other people. And but I have to tell you, I'm sure you've seen it too. I have seen people who work, they write, they work out, their body's in perfect shape, they do all the right things, and nothing happens to their career. Nothing. I mean, that's reality, and so I think it's important for people to find. It's important. Excuse me, 1 second. I'm sorry. It's important to find what I tell people all the time. It is truly possible to have more than one passion. You can have several things that you like. So when people hear from me, they'll say, "Oh my God, how did you become an educator?" Well, I have a passion for education. I do think that if I'm a part of an institution where we're changing lives and by opening up the minds of children and helping them reach their full potential, I have a great passion for that. I also have a great passion for history. My bachelor's degree is in history. I love studying history, but I also have a passion for music. What's really tough in life sometimes, as the highest cognitive level, the highest level of thinking, based on the research that has been out there for many years, and some people might debate this, but but is create the ability to create, to take something, create something completely original and new. And for me, I think it's important to when I spent those 2 years on Kauai writing music and reflecting, it allowed me to get to a point where I could actually think at the highest cognitive level, and I needed the right environment around me to be able to do that. And that environment where I wasn't competing and I was just there just to write what was fascinating. I mean, it was incredible. I don't know how people, like, I don't know how the Beatles, I don't know how John Lennon and Paul McCartney was living the lives they were living and still writing incredible music. I don't know how they did that. For me in particular, I'm a person that likes to be alone. And so for me, being alone allows me to work at the highest cognitive level. And so the music industry is one that those highs and lows I didn't allow me to reach my full potential as a thinker, as a person. And so for me, if I think back, if I could rewrite everything again, pardon the pun, I would want to be a writer. I would actually, the kind of person that I am would be much more successful writing music for other people who tend to thrive in the feast or famine type environment. I know some people who really, the more drugs they take, the more they stay up, the more creative they are. I don't know how they do it. I mean, I remember people, I remember some of the best musicians working with them in the studio, they're being paid triple scale and making jokes about the fact that, we got to start doing drugs again because we never played music as well as we did. But for me in particular, I'm the kind of person that I need to be I need to not have fear around me, the fear of not knowing when my next paycheck is coming in, the fear of, all the things that occur when you're on the road. I needed to be stable at home, feeling safe, not feeling tied to any record label or anything, just writing. And those 2 years really helped me kind of navigate, okay, what is it that you want to do for the rest of your life? So instead of moving to LA, I did move into the field of education, and I truly, truly love it. And I don't miss, although I do enjoy the people that I met traveling on tour and seeing the places that I did see, I don't miss the career very much.
And the passion which you talk about all of these things, it just screams out of me, and I love that. It's really infectious. But what I find fascinating is if I look at sort of what you were doing originally and what you're doing now, they're both infused by you're doing stuff you care about and you're just being you and you're kind of, just letting yourself go. And there's a sense of sort of unencumbrance that, you're in a space where you're comfortable and it's fine. It's all going well. And I love this because it's a beautiful illustration, I think, of kind of if you can find the thing that works for you and you don't have anyone else kind of dictating terms to you because you're not encumbered by financial constraints or having to live up to someone else's thing. You're just being you. I think that's one of the most liberating things. It's one of the most. So, I'm amazed that more people haven't worked this thing out because I sort of sit there and go, why would you spend your life doing? And I get there's people in hideous circumstances where they have no choice. But if you're lucky enough to live in a kind of developed country where we've got healthcare, like, why wouldn't you pick something that allows you to just be you and kind of be the best you can at what you're doing?
I can tell you what I believe. Because society, I was very lucky to have the experience that I had seeing the world through different lenses. For instance, I grew up, it's very different today in the United States now. But when I grew up in the United States, America was the greatest country. We saved the world in World War II. We did this. And I started traveling to Germany. I crossed Checkpoint Charlie. I met all these different people. And they're like, oh, no, the Russians were the one that did most of the, I'm thinking, what? And so I started realizing that society teaches you a lot of different things. And then I ended up going to college, and all of a sudden it was a different narrative that America was horrendous and that it was the land of slavery and that the movement west in the United States was the killing of the Native Americans was completely different from what I learned in high school. And it took this other route. And I think my personal feeling is this: when society teaches us a lot of things, we learn things on television, we learn things elsewhere. I think one of the things that stops us from reaching that point you talked about, where you're just going to be your authentic self and go with that, is that we take on a victim mentality. And I think that's what's happening in society today, where I'm going to go out on the streets and I'm going to riot and I'm going to break into all of these wealthy people's businesses, and I'm not going to worry about it because I'm just going to, take all their stuff because they got multi-millions, they got millions of dollars, and it doesn't matter because I'm a victim here of this horrible capitalistic society. And I hate to say it, but I see that out there. And people that fall into the category tend to be very lazy. I can tell you this, it took a lot of work for me to get to where I'm at. I had to work really hard. And I think it's about being authentic, but you got to work hard. Like, same thing with Prince. And Prince was always writing. He was always creating. He was always trying to get better. You got to have that. You got to be authentic, but you got to work hard too. And it's not just going to happen. You got to make it happen. But again, it's a numbers game. You got to put yourself out there and keep trying and go over and over and over again. Some of the most successful people, they just kept trying. But like you said, it's if you keep trying, but then you're authentic. I think that's the key. You got to be authentic. You got to keep trying. You got to work hard. But again, do not only do it in one specific area. It has to be more. So right. For me, I worked hard in a lot of different areas. I continued performing at night. I got to a point in my piano playing that one of my dreams was to play a 2-hour, gig only on the piano with me singing. And I worked really hard on that, and now I can do it. I worked really hard on my guitar playing, so I worked on my musician part and on the writing side, but I just didn't do that alone. I worked hard on the education side. And then I also spent a lot of time learning about history because it's just a passion of mine. I don't know if I'll ever make a dime out of it, but I love it and I work on it all the time. It helps me to kind of see the patterns in society and what's happening and help me to potentially predict the future. So, that's a great question. What stands in the way of people, reaching their full potential and finding happiness? Being authentic, working hard, putting yourself out there, not focusing just on one thing.
Amazing. I think that is a fabulous note on which to finish. I could continue this conversation. It has been a stupendous pleasure. I've thoroughly, you were part of the soundtrack of my youth. And I'm like, it's such a pleasure to meet you, but you've brought a raw kind of passion. There's some fabulous insights. Thank you so much for everything. When is the book coming out? Because I want to make sure that we can get a hold of this thing. And clearly when the world clears up, you will be coming to the UK to perform musically and to sign the book, obviously, because it's going to be a major hit given what we've seen. When's it out?
Well, but I'm hoping that it gets out. I'm hoping that it gets out either at the end of this year or beginning of next year. Being the president of an educational institution during a pandemic is tough. So I'm spending a lot of my time on that. But I hope to get the rest of it done. I actually wrote most of the book in England. That was 2 years ago. I did a study at Oxford University, and I wrote most of the book there. So I'm just finishing up now. So I hope to come back someday. I told my wife, you have to see Oxford. It's the most beautiful place. So
amazing choice of university, because that's where I went to university. So you've just gone up in my estimation again.
That's great.
Amazing. Listen, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's been an absolute supreme pleasure. We look forward, when the pandemic's cleared, we look forward to seeing you back in Europe, and I would love to, I will keep in touch with you to make sure that if you make it here, that I will get to catch you in person and we can continue this fabulous conversation. But Glenn Medeiros, thank you so much for that. And I would say one thing, right? I know that the education sector is challenged at the moment with everything that's going on. I think all of the students that are in your care are incredibly lucky because they've clearly got someone that's massively passionate, that loves what they're doing, and you can't get better than that for someone to run an educational establishment. So I wish you the very best of luck in managing that as well.
Thank you so much for your kind words, and thank you. I've done a lot of interviews over my years, and I can really tell that your heart is in the right place and you're doing a good thing. So keep up the work that you're doing, and please contact me if you're in Hawaii, and so that we can get together, have some Mai Tais.
There is no question about that. Oh, you're on for that. Thank you.
All right.
So that's it for another episode of the Human Risk Podcast. My enormous thanks to Dr. Glenn Medeiros for being super entertaining, really insightful, and for his very kind offer of mojitos in Hawaii. I'm going to take him up on that just as soon as I can get on a plane to do so. If you want to hear more about Glenn's music career, find out about the St. Louis School in Hawaii that he is president and CEO of, you'll find links to all of that in the show notes. And rest assured, I will keep you posted as soon as his book is out. Maybe we can tempt him back onto the show to talk a little bit more about that. If this is your first time listening to the Human Risk Podcast, welcome. You can subscribe wherever you get your quality audio content. It's on all of the major podcasting platforms. I'll be back with another episode of this show very, very soon. So please stay tuned on this frequency. Stay safe, and thanks for listening.